gets a goal? Who got the assist? Who got the assist?
Greetings, everybody. So as become habit, we're here for yet another guest appearance episode in our series of more zoomed out chats as we go into the second international break of this season. And this time it's returning friend of the pod, Simon, who's here to help us go over some analytics boxes. Not the first time we're using that today, sorry. Buckle up in terms of issues topping everyone's discussion agenda so far this season. Si, the Dark Lord of Analytics and lead Stan, who could, back when FPLX didn't resemble the mouth of hell and Turkmenistan on some days, send the entire community into meltdown with just one tweet. Welcome back, mate. How are you doing? It must be your third, fourth, fifth time on the show now. I was trying to figure out on the way home. You've been on quite a bit, which must show we must like you.
Yeah, I've lost count. I think my first appearance was with Jamie Weerogue, and then he didn't get the invite back, and I did. So I mean, that says it already, doesn't it?
And where can we find you these days on the interwebs?
On Blue Sky, it's analyticf.pl is my handle. But yeah, I'm doing well to answer your question. Yeah, thanks for asking. How about you guys?
Tom, we never ask you how you are. I always answer how I'm doing. You need to go on this one, Tom.
I'm fine. I'm the eternal part of the furniture in this sort of WGTA universe. I've just bought I bought a PS5 today. I was telling the guys offline, succumbing to FOMO when it comes to Ghost of Yote. So I got that all set up, and it's now downloading in the background as we speak. Which I've just realised it's a really bad idea because we are streaming this live. But never mind. Let's hope that I don't blame the Ghost of Yote in my new PS5 if that goes wrong. But yeah, Sam, how are you?
I am very well, thank you, Tom. It's a shame Southampton can't buck up their ideas any quicker, but outside of that, loving FPL, loving life. It's all just fun and games, and it's great to have a pod going on in the background whilst you've got more important things like video games downloading as well, Tom. So hopefully for the next hour and a half or so, we can give you something to distract you from the video game download. And if you're watching along, happy international break to those who celebrate it. There aren't many who do, but we are who got the assist. Today's agenda, we welcome back Simon warmly onto the pod. We'll check in to see how you're getting on this season so far. Obviously very early days, so no pressure whatsoever. Cast an analytical lens over 4 key areas, although I'm sure we'll kind of move across a few other things throughout the pod as we tend to do on these. First off, it will be the changing fortunes of some of the key men in FPL this season. Then on to the impact of DefCon and basically on analytics and predictive models. Is it overblown or is the hype real? And then the next block of 4 fixtures before the next international break. I think between, is it game week 11 and game week 12?
Yep.
So we've got another block of 4 to come. We're going to run our rule over that 4 and probably a little bit of a mapping ahead beyond that as well. It is Tuesday, the 7th of October. International break is well and truly on, although we haven't hit any international fixtures yet. So I'm sure plenty will be happening from tomorrow night onwards with injuries and all that fun. But for now, Simon, let's move across to your team from this week, just to quickly summarize how you're getting on this season. Sorry, I took your camera off there for a second. On my bad. But yeah, just walk us through your team. Obviously, not too much pressure on the rank just yet. But yeah, walk us through how you're feeling about the season.
Yeah, I mean, it's an absolute classic, isn't it? That just before I'm coming on the pod, I get a game week rank of 10.8 mil. So
top 11 mil though.
Yeah, I mean, it was looking a bit shaky for that at some points, to be honest. So the curse of the pod hit me, but the season's been quite a weird one, hasn't it? So I started off pretty badly, probably like quite a lot of other people, especially in the analytics community. I was about 8 million after 2 game weeks. I've made 1 transfer all season, which was Tielemans in for Ruta in game week 3, and that forced me to wildcard in game week 4. And I had that 15 that you see on the screen was my wildcard 4 team. I haven't made a transfer since. I had probably one of my best ever game weeks in game week 5. I hit like a game week rank of about 3,000 without playing the bench boost.
Nice.
and went from 5 mil to 1 mil. Hit the triple captain in 6, which was nice. And I've bounced around. Last week, I went from about 500k to about 2 mil. So it's kind of all over the place, really.
Yeah,
Yeah.
39 and a notable absentee as well, which we'll definitely get into. But yeah, I mean, you're kind of famous for being resistant to the groupthink and kind of the crowd, aren't you? So I suppose it's kind of a bit of a hallmark of your play, especially when it comes to looking at the team. The team is very good. I don't think there's many particularly sort of off kilter picks here. Obviously, you've got the analytic standard of Anton Stack hanging around. But yeah, a nice sort of blend of different characters. And I like how it's Salah and Haaland, both from the same team, and trying to kind of eke out the value beyond that.
Yeah, the basic thinking there on Wildcard was you could either just go with Salah and then you have to book in transfers basically to get Haaland in 6, or free hit in 6. That went not great for the people who went down that road. And I didn't kind of love that. I only had 2 free transfers at the time. I knew that I didn't really know who the best like cheapy picks who are going to emerge were going to be. So I was like, let's get on both, make all the sacrifices, the kind of squeezes you need to while you have a wild card, because it's much easier to get out of it than it is to get into it. And then I can also see what's going on with Liverpool for a while. I can see if Haaland continues to just be a complete machine, and just kind of get some information before I work out what I want to do. I'm now at that point, and I still don't know what I want to do though, which is kind of interesting to think about. But yeah, I think I've got 5 free transfers now. The team's ultimately going to need some upgrades on the depth, and so it's either Salah down to Saka or Gyökeres down to DCL that kind of give the money to upgrade, probably Cash, King, Marshall, some combination of. So the team's in a decent place, but yeah, the logic was a bit odd. So not many people have Salah Haaland, but that was the thinking behind it.
Makes sense, and having that extra flexibility with the 5 is very good as well, and certainly something which I think you didn't say last year that you were on kind of. You were always going to kind of have a baseline of 2 free transfers as kind of just the ultimate insurance, and then kind of just take it from there as a play style with the 5 free transfers coming in.
Yeah, exactly. You have a constant stream of information, and so if you're you don't know when unexpected events are going to happen, kind of by definition, and so there's always a little bit of value in having transfers in your pocket in a given game week, and so it's just about taking that into account, really.
Fair. I'm glad we're not looking at my team this week. Sorry, Sam.
Yeah, I was going to say that will be interesting this time next week when we chat through what you did. But yeah, I completely echo that thought. I've been very bad with rolling transfers this season so far, mainly through necessity more than anything else. But I think the objective, and spoiler alert, I'm on a wild card this week, which we'll come on to at the end. The objective will be to try and get up to 3, 4, 5 free transfers as quickly as possible, because information, as we've seen in the first few game weeks, is fluctuating massively week to week, and trends are emerging. And when you've got big hitters like Salah, like Palmer, like Saka, who haven't really been at their very best yet and aren't in a ton of drafts, free transfers are always going to be quite helpful to have in your back pocket if they do get back to their full form. Although, if you've got a wild card, you could just go with both of them like you have, Simon. So both Salah and Haaland are going to be issues throughout the season. If you don't have them or don't have a quick route to them, then it's probably quite a nice idea to have a couple of free transfers stocked just in case.
Yeah,
definitely. It's true. I think there's probably slightly less value on trying to roll up to 4 or 5 right now if you're not there. Just because you're going to have to spend all your transfers by 15 anyway, because you're going to get the top up on 16, so you're going to lose them if you don't. Therefore, if you're on let's say 2 free transfers now, if you end up rolling for 2-3 weeks, you're going to be in game week 9-10 before you're spending them, and you've only got 5 weeks to spend them. So there's a bit of that to consider, and just in terms of how you manage where you spend your resources, basically.
Yeah, cool. I suppose. Sorry, Tom. Just very quickly from my end on that one. As someone with a very heavy vested interest on Salah at the moment, considering I'm wildcarding, the reason I want to roll quite heavily into around game week 12, probably 12 or 13, is so I've got a stock of free transfers. If I don't have Salah on my wildcard, I can get to him without needing hits to get there. So that's something in the back of my mind. We'll come on to it later. But yeah,
there's some things around there.
I do agree that 15, is it 15 or 16? I can't remember. Is going to be quite a nice reset button for a lot of us.
Yeah, 16 is when you get the new ones. So 15 is your last week to spend the old ones.
Yeah, perfect. Okay.
Let's get on to what we're doing. So the idea here really is to run the rule over a few analytic boxes with Sai. I think we've done the introduction to analytics in the past, had those debates, etc. And I don't think it'd be too fruitful to go over the same grass again and talk about EV, what it means and stuff. Sorry, but I'm hoping that you've heard that sort of thing in the past or okay with it, and you can do a bit of your own research if you're curious. So instead, I think today we're going to go through kind of 4 items, as Sam said earlier on our checklist, to talk about with Sai and get his view on these things to add to kind of what we said. We have covered a few of these things over the last few weeks, but I think it's really interesting to get that unique perspective from something that goes beyond. Sam and I are both, neither of us are kind of anti-analytics. We both use it, we look at it, but obviously Sai is a lot more in that field than we are. Somewhere in the middle, I think. We drive hybrid cars, whereas Sai is very much on the driving an EV. Anyway, I think the first thing to talk about is probably the fortunes of some key men this year. We're doing 4s for some reason on this pod, against my culture, but hey, let's do 4x4. So I think maybe kind of, and obviously room for tangents. We're very happy to have tangents on this because it is international break after all. But Semenyo, Salah, Bruno, and that Haaland bloke, I think, are all worth kind of a bit of a mention, really, and I guess an evaluation from an analytics point of view. Obviously, I think just need to say up front, because it will be mentioned otherwise, that there's lots and lots of noise at this moment. It's very early in the season, and I don't want that to be a constant refrain throughout this conversation. Otherwise, it just becomes really tiresome, frankly. And let's just acknowledge that there's loads of noise. We all agree, we all nod, and we all move on. But I think that's opening gambit, I guess. Semenyo. So Simon, don't own. Sam, you haven't owned, but that's maybe more due to timing than anything else. Massive overperformance this year for Semenyo. 5.7 over in terms of non-pen XGI. Only one player is actually outperforming Semenyo on XG as well, who's Caicedo, which was quite an interesting one. But yeah, I mean, from your perspective, Simon, I've noted that I did have a look at kind of the solvers and everything like that before the pod, just to kind of just do a bit of a double check, a sense check. I did note that he's one of those that people aren't kind of being ushered towards. I mean, is he kind of this year's Bumo, where he'd be like a solid sort of long-term pick, or do you view him as more of a Lingard or an Almiron sort of thing? I mean, where do you stand on him at the moment?
I think he's a better pick than, say, Lingard or Almiron were, for sure. He's a guy who's kind of like been in and around the edge of my solves, but never like really close enough to the top to either buy or pick on a wild card. But I think he's a solid pick for sure. I think the longer that Kluivert is not on the pitch, he's an even more solid pick to have the penalties. It doesn't look like that's like changing that soon, although I'm not super close to it, to be honest. But yeah, I think he's a very defensible pick, especially from 12. I think he's got a really nice fixture in 12. Is it Burnley? Well, I got that wrong. But yeah, it's a good time to jump on if you haven't got him already. Obviously, he's actually like kicking my ass.
And mine, don't worry.
Yeah, I was on like 15 points from 7 players, and Semenyo outscored my whole team at some point. So that was a bit unpleasant. He's a decent pick. He's not going to keep scoring at more than double his like expected goals. We all know that, right? But it doesn't mean that he's not a good pick, even when that kind of settles down.
Yeah, I think you've hit the nail on the head there. Just because he is massively overperforming doesn't mean that you remove that overperformance and he's automatically a terrible pick. At the end of the day, he's getting 90 minutes a match. His shot volume's high. He's getting into good areas. Obviously, that's quite eye-testy stuff, but that also brings with it a pretty decent chunk of XG. And if he's on penalties whilst Kluivert's not on the pitch, and although he scored the banger, he did it off the bench the other week. So I don't know why Bournemouth would change that up too quickly. He does look like a pretty decent pick, although he is getting more and more expensive. So the higher the price that you buy him in at, probably the less of a prudent move it will be. But I mean, like I said, I'm on Wildcard, and it will be no spoilers to anyone that he's in my Wildcard draft at the moment. So there's also an element of probably too early in the season to think this way, but a bit of risk analysis and how exposed you want to be to an asset that like does tick all of those boxes that I just mentioned. We don't expect him to continue overperforming, but if he performs at his going rate, which is still pretty high, are you willing to take that on when the ownership can really start punishing you? Or are you a risk-taking manager that is happy to take those punches, but also have a few kicks back in the opposite direction when it doesn't go their way? So, I mean, for me, I just think he's going to score a lot of points. So I'm having him.
I mean, the next four, at Palace away, obviously quite a stubborn defensive unit, albeit potentially a bit tired against Everton, which may have crept in over the last 20, 30 minutes. Forest in 9, I mean, potentially looking at a captaincy option there. And then City and then Villa, 2 tough away games, 10 and 11 to round off the next 4. I mean, apart from game week 9, and obviously bearing in mind what you said there, Sam, about kind of acknowledging the game side of things where the ownership is so high that you are exposed to it, similar to João Pedro. Is there any kind of EV you can grab there in opposing a player like that? Sai, is that kind of your kind of current thought process, or is it the case that, you know, once you ramped up those free transfers as you have now, you just kind of get him in and think, oh, okay, I don't want to be exposed to that level of risk anymore? Like, how does that calculation work for you when you've got a player like that?
Yeah, it's I don't think I will bring him in right now, to be honest. I think it's a nice spot to bet against it if you're seeking risk. Like, there's lots of ways that you can rack up like teams that have, you know, like structures that will give you as much expected value without Semenyo. I don't think he's going to like move the needle completely to make your team like go from not good to good. You can have a good team with or without. And so, like, with that in mind, I don't know, I see something like 80% EO. Yeah, I think I'm going to bet against that unless the value is really, like, you know, a bit crazy. Yeah, I don't know. It's just the kind of thing I like to take on. That's a bit of personal preference. One thing I will mention is Bournemouth have been kind of like getting more and more defensive in my team ratings models for about like 25, 30 games now. Just that kind of like lines, attack and defense, both steadily like going towards less goals. And the bookies don't really agree in terms of their evaluation. They still think their attack's quite solid, and their defense not as good. So, I mean, like, choose your sources. Mine's kind of based on like XG, so that's just like a reflection of how the XG's looked over the past like 25 games. And so, if you wanted to like take a bet on double Bournemouth defense and no Semenyo, like I've got, like, you know, I think it's okay as well. I don't think anyone needs to get like too crazy hit up about Semenyo. Like, pick him if you want. If you want to take him on, it's also probably fine.
It's just so hard in the rough and tumble of every week. I mean, as I'm sure you found on Friday night, Sam, that, you know, if the player does explode like that, obviously there's lots of noise surrounding that, but that can be, for a lot of people, the trigger to just kind of think, you know what, I just need to just deal with this and get it done so I can sleep easy at night. So I think that's why it's kind of fundamentally interesting to get your point of view on these kinds of players. Next one is Mo Salah. Obviously, the one player that we spent the most time on WGCA over the last getting on for 10 years discussing, but one that is potentially kind of not in that many teams right now, albeit a nod to the future kind of need to consider in that short period before AFCON does loom. 2.3 is a non-pen XGI thus far. He's actually overperforming that at the moment. Is this a downturn? Has Father Time finally knocked, in your view, Simon? Note that Salah remains top of the projections at the moment for FPL Review, for example. Sorry, Johnny, I know you're in the chat. I haven't necessarily. I really should have. I will in a minute.
So still got him out on top as well.
Okay, fine. Thank you, Sam.
Or he did last time I checked about an hour ago.
Thank you, Sam. So there you go. So yeah, I mean, it's one of those things, isn't it? Where you said earlier on, Simon, you were thinking of potentially removing Salah. And I can see that in terms of the upcoming fixtures. What's your view on him overall? Is he still kind of as he was, a player that is you're always going to you'll be removing him with the express aim to be getting back there in a few weeks, or is he the kind of player that you're now willing, a bit like Semenyo, to just at some point bet against?
Yeah, I think it's much more of a bet for by having him than a bet against by not, just because I think how the EO sits. So it's a really tricky one. So we can say that like the performances this season haven't been good for sure. Then we can kind of try to work out why. And you could say like age is potentially one factor. Maybe he's just like physically like lost a half a yard and like, just can't cut it. And that's one explanation. You've had obviously a lot of turnover in the Liverpool attack. Well, in the team generally. So you've lost Trent, who was the main source of getting the ball forward, and especially into Salah. And you are trying to fit in Wirtz and Isak and Ekitike as three other new pieces. And it hasn't really worked so far this season for them. You do have to kind of think at some point they will work out how to find some solutions to getting the ball forward into the attackers, like in decent positions on a more regular basis than they're doing, just because there's going to be things like you're gaining in familiarity, so you like know which runs people make, and like a lot of these things become subconscious through repetition, and so just like through time it will get a bit better. And also you got to think like Slot will find some solutions to the things which like really aren't working. So then if you think it's more Liverpool attack is kind of broken, then you'd have to think Salah's numbers will get a bit better. If you think it's age, you probably think they won't. It's hard to tell. They looked a bit better against Chelsea as a team.
Agreed.
I think Salah's looked at like more dangerous than he has done. Probably. I mean a bit against Palace as well, to be honest. I mean they created a lot of chances there as well. They were just pretty porous. So who knows? I mean, I think I'd probably like to kick it down a couple of weeks, but I mean, I think if you don't own right now, I wouldn't be spending transfers on trying to like reverse Haaland into Salah. I think that just because you're using your resources on something that's so uncertain, and you can so easily leave yourself in a position where you've spent all your free transfers to make your team worse, which is just not a good thing to do in FPL, obviously.
I think what's really interesting with the sort of narrative around Salah is we all seem, or a lot of people seem quite heavily inclined to guess that he is kind of past it now and that Liverpool just aren't going to find a solution, when actually I think, and the models that we tend to look at as well suggest that it's much more likely that it is a bit of a blip and he probably will get back to somewhat resembling his best. Now, will he hit a 300-point season? Probably not, because that in itself is massive overperformance. But can he get back in check with his normal numbers and get back to something that resembles a very successful 14.5 million asset? Yeah, absolutely. He can probably still manage 200 to 250 points if he gets on a bit of a run. Obviously, AFCON will put a dent in that, but points per game is all that really matters here. And again, on a wild card, I'm very concerned, I suppose, not with having him immediately necessarily, although I don't hate the next few fixtures, but certainly by 13 or 12, having a plan to get back to him is one of my primary concerns on a wild card, because I don't want to lock myself out of that avenue, because I think it is far more likely that it is a blip and that they do find solutions to these problems than he is just done as an asset. One day that will come. No question. We know that will inevitably happen at some point, but for it to happen at this exact point, it seems relatively unlikely that we've all called it, that after 7 game weeks, he's just done. So I want to get back there at some point, or at least have a route to get back there.
I called it at the start of the season, of course. Yeah. I mean, I think the only thing that kind of on this, I think that, but you've both made very eloquent points, so I don't want to echo you too far. I think the only question that comes to mind for me, and it's been noticed by Martin in the chat as well, is that at what point do we kind of look at Salah as an asset and look at kind of the performances and kind of, yeah, okay, understand, acknowledge all the contextual factors, but maybe think, are the market odds still correct? I mean, is Salah still going to perform as projected, given him as an individual? At what point do you, Saib, start to think, oh, well, actually, maybe he's not, going to ever reach the point that we want him to again because of age, because of all sorts of things. At what point do you just kind of think, well, actually, I don't think I'm going to want to go back and invest all that money all over again?
I mean, I think you're doing it gradually, right? It's not really a point where you're saying, I'm certain that he's like absolutely going to get back to his best, to like, I'm certain he's not. It's more, okay, well, there is some percentage chance that he drops off a cliff just because he's 33 before a ball is kicked. And maybe that chance that we think that's happened has gone up a bit. The big clue for me on that would be, say, if about halfway through the season or by the time Salah goes to AFCON, like Liverpool are performing much better, but Salah isn't. Then you go like, hey, what's going on here? I'm a lot less confident that this is Salah is fine and the team is the problem. So I guess that would be like one thing to try to separate out the two. But you're going to need a bit of time on that. It's like I say, it really depends on your position in terms of where your team is from your free transfers.
Yeah.
Don't spend them on bring him in, probably a fine hold. But I mean, there's also like, there's a lot you can do if you're doing something like Salah to Saka, right? Like it depends on the sacrifices you're making in terms of the FPL landscape. The point where like the mid-price mids where Saka didn't have penalties and Palmer's injured, it's kind of like it gets a bit barren quite quickly. So you can probably like squeeze them and get them fit Salah and Saka on penalties if Palmer gets back fit. Like then you want the budget and it becomes less viable to have him.
Yeah. One thing, just a quick thought from you, Simon, on goal share for Liverpool. Now, obviously, with Isak coming in, Verts, obviously at the beginning of the season, I think markets had his goal share probably a bit higher than what we've seen so far. And Gakpo obviously takes a little bit of it, Ekatike to a certain extent. How do you rate goal share in your projections? And do you think Salah has maybe taken a little bit of a bump in those numbers? Obviously, Liverpool's goal share might go up a tiny bit in terms of the expected market data, but proportionally, has Salah taken a bit of a bump in your thinking there? A bit of a knock, even.
I think it's really hard to say, honestly. I think there's too many question marks over the way in which Liverpool are going to like regularly fashion their best chances when the attack's like in its new configuration feeling settled. I don't think we have like a lot of information on that. So I think maybe it would go down, maybe not, maybe it would go up. Like, the argument is that Isak it has more XG than the person he's replacing. Therefore, it has to come from somewhere. But that to me doesn't really work as an argument if you're also saying that Isak is like worth 120 million pounds because he adds value by getting shots away from positions where other people wouldn't. It's like, the Salah could go up by being like, defenses need to pay more attention to Isak than they did to, say, Darwin. So therefore, there's more space for Salah. Like, there's so many ways in which it could go up or down that we kind of have to wait for the data to come through on this, I think.
Inconsequential so far then, I suppose.
Yeah, or at least uncertain, I would say. Like, it could be very, very consequential, but we really don't know which way it's going to go.
Okay, thank you. That I appreciate that.
I still think it's interesting that it's kind of, the lurch from certain to uncertain feels like a proper paradigm shift. But you're right. It won't take very long. You're both right. It won't take very long. It won't take very much for it to shift completely again in the opposite direction. It's worth mentioning he's still overperforming. So there we go. To go from one team in red in crisis to a team in red that has turned the corner, we must talk about Manchester United's talisman, Bruno Fernandes. I feel like we speak about him every time you're on, Si. And, third for XG obvious caveats. Non-pen XG around kind of 27th, I think it was. XA around the top 10, and 0.43 non-pen XGI per 90, similar to the likes of Welbeck, below all kinds of characters. I'm saying this for Devil's Avocado reasons. I'm not saying it for real reasons. Let me be clear. Such as Harvey Barnes, Noah Okafor, the Leeds' Great New Hope, Amid Diallo, Jacob Murphy, and Chris Wood. Would anything shake your faith in him? Obviously, I saw that Solio did a little bit of piece on him to show that the change in position doesn't really impact his FPL output, and I'm not sure what I can say. What's the opposite of proud owner of Bruno Fernandes right now?
Spiteful owner.
Yeah. It's a hate own, a hate watch. It's a hate own. But I've got him. I don't think he's going anywhere for me for a long time. I'm still drinking the Kool-Aid that Sam has fed me, and that he's going to be a monster in FPL this year. But I mean, what's your view on old Bruno, a long-term favourite of yours, and also solvers and analytics managers everywhere? I assume it's still the same. Yeah, ashamed owner, Johnny. I completely agree with that.
Yeah, I mean, probably Bruno Fernandes is the best value pick in the game. I'm not even saying this as a joke. Actually,
more than Calvert-Lewin. That is disgusting. I can't believe this.
More on him later.
We will get onto Calvert-Lewin, but Calvert-Lewin is also an excellent value pick right now, especially. But on Bruno Fernandes, like you say, the change in position doesn't affect his FPL output negatively. He's putting up 0.4 this season. He spent most of last season playing in the same role he is now. Put up between 0.5 and 0.6, non-pen XGI. He's on penalties. I know he's missed 2, but he's historically a good penalty taker. And he also now gets DefCons on a reasonable rate. It's just an extra bonus on top of all of that. His price hasn't really gone up. It's 8.5 to 9 million. And I don't know. He never gets dropped. He never gets injured. I mean, I'm going to jinx all of this now, obviously. But historically, again, he's rarely got dropped. He's rarely got injured. So you haven't really needed to use free transfers on that spot. You can just leave him there and he just shits points. And it's great. Why would you not have him? It's such an obvious own to me.
I mean, so far, I agree with you. I'm very worried about showing my wildcard draft later at this point. But yeah, I am a huge fan of Bruno. I've had him since game week 1. I had him for a long period of last season when most people didn't really like him either. I tend to agree with everything Simon's just said there. With the addition of DefCon, he's just a very good value pick. The only thing that would maybe put me off a slight bit is if we did start to worry about whether or not he'd take pens. And
yeah, that would change it.
Yeah, if he's missed 2 out of 3 this season, given there are other penalty takers with a bit of an ego in that side that will want them, how long will it be before Bruno generously donates? Would be my only question. But until we see that, I still think he's on penalties. So it's hard to really give that narrative with any sort of conviction until you see it happening. But it is just worth noting that they do have good penalty takers who like scoring goals quite a lot. So I wouldn't be shocked to see that come into it if he misses another one or something. It's possible. Tom, as a reluctant, ashamed, whatever Bruno owner, what are your current thoughts on him? Are you wavering considering it's Liverpool up next?
No. As much as I do love making superfluous transfers, as has been noted, to my chagrin, I just look at the upcoming runs, game week 9 all the way to game week 22 or something ridiculous. It's they've got very, very good fixtures, and yeah, if you lose the penalties, I do think that it seems a bit odd to me, put it this way, that losing penalties means that a character like Bruno loses a lot. But then on the other side of it, with a vague knowledge of kind of how the models work, players that I've just not fancied this year, like your man Tielemans and also Paqueta, do gain a lot of prominence because of the pens or potential pens or something like that. So I can kind of see where that comes from. As it stands, my feeling is that I'm just he's not a problem until it becomes a proper problem. And I'm anticipating, I'm hoping there'll be is it the 1st November that United can sack Amarim without there being a massive payoff. We've got a player who produces loads, and then the potential new manager bounce within the scope of there being very good fixtures. So I mean, none of it particularly worries me at the moment. I think I'll leave him in and just kind of see where it goes. But yeah, penalty, Man United. Brian Bumo has got the ball now. I think that would be the moment when Analytics, not Twitter, but Analytics FPL, the Analytics Discord, just goes offline because everyone's on going, oh my God, he's not in pens anymore. Sell. Oh my, what do we do? This is our founding keystone. Oh no, it's all over.
He's given them away before. I remember him giving one to Rashford. And
yeah, he did.
I think we all had a meltdown, to be honest. So yeah, fair enough.
But yeah,
well, it just makes Burma a great pick, doesn't it? just take 1 million out, switch it to the new Bruno, which is perfect. Even more advanced as well. Takes corners too sometimes. Done. Easy job.
I think that's interesting though, because I think that gets to the number bit, doesn't it? It's the number bit basically that Bruno's good because he's on penalties. Is that effectively it, Simon? Surely it's not that simplistic.
No, I think Bruno would probably still end up being quite a good pick without penalties, to be honest. But he wouldn't be such a crazy value pick, right? It's interesting to think about why it makes such a difference, and it's because you're trying to pick the players at the very, very top of like the best value in the whole game. And so if somebody gets a boost, even if it's not like crazy consequential, let's say it's like 0.5 point a week, that makes quite a big difference as to whether you should pick them. And I think we'll maybe get into this with the DefCons later, but that's maybe like $1 million, $1.5 million like worth of value in terms of like what you can actually do with your budget.
Yeah.
And you just kind of either like lose that or gain that from the information that you gain, which again comes back to why having free transfers is useful.
Yeah. Well, in real terms as well, like if Bruno does lose penalties, on average, United might expect to get 5 penalties a year, 6 on average, probably a bit higher now. They've already had 3, so another 4 or 5 this season if they're lucky. That's 20-25 points potentially that he might be missing out on. That's not nothing. So yeah, I mean, if just putting it into real terms for anyone who almost wanted to visualize the loss of points there, it does make a bit of a difference at 9 million. So if he's off penalties, I think it does bear thinking about.
No, interesting, right? But I think we'll get on to another penalty conundrum, which is Saka and Gyökeres later, and definitely get on the DefCons point later on. But I suppose we'd be remiss not to talk about that Erling Haaland bloke. Breaking news: he might be a decent FPL pick. But yeah, I mean, this year, what can we say? Really, his worst starts to the season. I think he's absolutely washed, frankly. In terms of the underlying data, and completely washed in terms of the underlying numbers. Just been very lucky, I think, Simon. No, I'm kidding. But yeah, I do think it's quite interesting that he's now one of these players who has incepted both the analytics community and the grass one too, and there seems to be no real sort of like question about it, whereas I think in the past there has been kind of a bit more of one, and obviously with you going with Salah and Haaland, I suppose you speak to that as well in terms of just there's no point in trying to choose between these two, and given how he's doing this year, it does feel like he's is he here to stay in your view?
Yeah, it feels like Pep's been trying to draw up, just pass the ball to Haaland so that he can shoot for about like 2 or 3 years now, and he's done the most extreme version of that this year. Just from like looking at it, it's very funny to watch. Who knows whether this can? Like, I don't think it can continue at like such extreme like outlier proportions, but I do think Haaland could rack up a lot of XG. Like with all things, we should be like cautious in our interpretation of 7 games as to like what it means for the next 31 and like not overweight it. I don't think Erling Haaland's probably going to go at like a 1 point whatever XG per game, just because it's so far in that tail that you're like probably not. In terms of why everyone owns him, I think everyone on Analytics bought him in basically in 6. It's Burnley at home. I mean, you couldn't not really. So there was so much captaincy value there, which is why everyone spent the free transfers. And then I think, yeah, like I said, you don't really want to spend your resources reversing it. So I guess a lot of people made that choice by default of just how the fixtures went, and how the start of the season has gone. I wouldn't sell Haaland. The solver right now is screaming at me to sell Haaland. And I don't think I'm going to listen to it.
Robots telling people to sell robots. It's really quite meta now. The other thing on Haaland, I should mention just a very subjective point. I think an element of the way that City are playing right now is situational and based on the tools that Pep has got at his disposal. I think if Marmoush was fit, he's quite a selfish player. He likes getting his shots away and he cuts inside quite well. Pep at the moment has some very good wide players who like playing with width. Marmoush, once he gets back fit, playing on that inside forward channel probably doesn't supply that width and has been shouted at a few times by Pep for not getting the ball to Haaland quickly enough or taking it on himself. So I do just wonder if we get a little bit of a drop in goal share once Marmoush gets back in, but a highly subjective point in an otherwise analytical pod. So I'll leave it there.
Yeah, I mean, remains to be seen. I just feel like for now it's kind of a bit of a Haaland supremacy. I know that we've got notionally difficult fixtures. The only kind of one really is game week 11 against Liverpool, maybe game week 12 against Newcastle. We've had quite a stubborn defence, but Everton up next, and then Aston Villa and Bournemouth. I'm not sure I kind of see them as being particularly difficult games, despite the fact that Bournemouth and Villa have actually kind of improved as well recently. And then kind of from game week 13 all the way until game week 25, which is kind of Haaland's only bogey ground. I think Anfield's the only game he's not scored at. Only a stadium he's not scored at. So you've got a very long run of kind of Haaland supremacy with obviously Salah going away to AFCON. I mean, I think it is what it is right now. And I think it takes a very brave manager to go against Haaland. Let's move on to the old DefCons. And I think this is a really interesting one to kind of get the analytical take on, I guess, because I think Sam, you and I have been quite positive about the introduction of DefCons, but I think that it's become a slightly more nuanced since the last time we spoke about it. I do think there's more of a split, that defensively, potentially it's done the opposite of what maybe it was intended to do, in that it's kind of contracted the pool a little bit of available players, and that we've seen pronunciations online that attacking fullbacks are now dead, whereas you want those sort of boring defender picks. But I think in midfield there's still a good picture, and there's lots of sort of trade-offs, especially in the cheap sheets, between players like Reinders, who I know Reinders erroneously got DefCons a couple of weeks ago, but players like him versus Casado and that kind of enduring sense of value. But kind of later on, if you're looking at Bruno and thinking, DefCons are a plus, at that price point, if there is somebody else who comes in like a Saka or like a Marmoush, Sam, as you mentioned earlier on, who's producing at the top end in terms of kind of general goal and assist output, maybe that kind of muddies the picture a little bit if Bruno does continue to potentially not return. There's lots of context surrounding that. But yeah, from an analytical point of view, Sai, how has this sort of been fed in terms of models that you use or models that you create around FPL? I mean, what's this impact to you, and is it potentially a bit of an overblown thing in terms of how the community is viewing it right now?
I think this is one of the kind of situations where analytics is super useful, and the more complex the scoring system gets, then the more useful it's going to be. And that you should value it at the kind of correct amount, right? You should work out what the probability is you think someone hits it, and just add the points, and then just move on with your life. Really, there's no point being like, oh, I should get this player, but he doesn't get DefCons, he gets points in the wrong way. That doesn't really make any sense. You just chuck it in the points and forget about it. I think the more interesting thing about DefCons is, okay, I've got two things to say really. The first is I think they nailed the implementation. It being essentially just like an event, like an assist or a goal, but a small one. So there's a bit of a cliff, I think, is like just nice for gameplay. And I think limiting the upside of it. So capping at 2 points for a game, I think, is also very good, so it doesn't take over the game. The stuff around the like player pool contracting, I think you can just fix it with pricing ultimately. If you just make all the centre backs like $500,000 more expensive next year, you're kind of done. In terms of like how we play the game, the most interesting thing it's done is it's narrowed the gap between a difficult fixture and a easy fixture for a lot of players, because your DefCons kind of work a bit like save points in that you get them more in your worst fixtures. And so that means that the value of a deeper squad for rotation is slightly reduced. And combined with the forwards basically never getting DefCons, I think that's what's led to the resurgence, the nostalgic resurgence of the 4.5 forward slot, just after everyone had got used to 8 attackers in their team as the meta.
Oh, I love the depth of the third forward. Honestly, I mean, it's just one of those things that Nick was very keen on back in the day. I'm still a 3-5-2 stan. I kind of, just because of the rise of Saka, which we got earlier on, the return of Saka, I do kind of regret having Gyökeres, but he's going to stay for me. But yeah, no, I do think it's an interesting way of looking at it. It's more of a bonus, and I think you're right that maybe because it has been limited, it's kind of contains the potential impact you could have on the game, and maybe it's I don't know, Sam, what you think, but maybe it's a bit of a because it's so new, there's that novelty effect that we speak about it an awful lot, and it's given it's that sort of outsized sort of feeling to a lot of people that it's kind of taken over the game, but really it hasn't so much potentially. I mean, there are players like Casado who have 8 extra DefCons, obviously Senesi the top performing in terms of actual DefCon points accrued with 12, but I don't know, I think there's been lots of kind of effects from it. It's just kind of what it means for us as FPL managers assessing our picks and what it means from an analytical standpoint. I'm not sure that it should be as big as potentially it could be suggested it could be because of the conversations that have been had online.
Yeah, so I think with DefCon, the reason that so many people are talking about it is because it's something new, it's something different, but mainly because it's all of the attacking returns that we're used to getting with players in defense and midfield, especially obviously the DefCon affected positions. The prices of those players are already baked in because the best attacking players are 5.5 to 6 million defenders, and obviously the most expensive midfielders in the game. They're the ones who get the attacking returns. The price is reflective of the returns that they've historically got. The only issue that Simon touched on when he was talking was around the pricing of what are now some very good, effective, cheap players who get reliable points at 4.5 million, 5.5 in midfield, because they've got that certainty of hitting DefCon, or near certainty. It's much more repeatable, much more reliable than something as noisy as attacking returns for players of that price point. So 4.5 million defenders, you might get lucky once in a blue moon and find a 4.5 million defender that's getting 10 to 15 attacking returns if you're really, really lucky. But I don't think you need to be particularly lucky to identify a 4.5 million defender this season that can get 20 matches of DefCon, which is an extra 40 points this season. It's perfectly plausible. And I could probably identify 4 or 5 of them right now that I could confidently say hit that threshold. With attacking returns, you can't. So it's at certain specific price points that it's kind of made the picks quite obvious. But as soon as you get outside of those price points, there's still plenty of variety, and the picks will fluctuate week to week and based on fixtures. Munoz is coming back into the conversation after his 1 goal, and everyone seems to think that he's a bit of a template breaker all of a sudden. Attacking returns, especially for defenders, come very few and far between, but when they do come, they're noisy as hell, and they do remind people how valuable they are. So I think it will just fluctuate throughout the season. We'll get used to DefCon. The cheaper assets, because the price isn't reflective of the value that they now have, are going to be a bit of a sticking point for a lot this season, and some are resistant to go there, especially in midfield with like Caicedo, Anderson, so on. But I think by this time next year, we're not even going to worry about it because their prices will get bumped, as Simon said, and their value will be baked in because we know that it's a very highly repeatable process. And as we said at the start of the season, put one or two of these guys in to just pad out your 11, pad out your 15, and you'll rarely need to make emergency transfers because these guys play 90 minutes, they don't get rotated, and 50% of games they're hitting DefCon. And this season, even more so than that, by the looks of it. But I'm sure it will regress a little bit.
I mean, I think the only kind of question I did kind of raise this the other week, Sam. I think maybe last week actually. Do you think 2 points is too much, Simon, for DefCon? Given the thresholds at 10 for defenders and 12 for midfielders, which people still seem to forget about. Actually, I did see a lot of people proclaiming that Bruno Fernandes had gotten DefCon after getting 10 this weekend, which I found was quite funny. But yeah, I mean. Is 2 points too much? Does that impact sort of the calculus a bit too much? I mean, I did see a few suggestions that should go down to 1, maybe. Have they pitched it right, or do you think it's a bit too far in the direction of DefCon as it is?
No, I think it's good. Right. If the point is to bring more players into the kind of zone where you can pick them at a low price, right? Because the problem is even if you had like Caicedo without DefCon at 4.5, you still wouldn't bother really picking him, right? Because he takes up a spot in your team, and that's too much cost for the points you're going to get. Because he's never going to be high enough to ever play. So what's the point? And then I think if you're doing 1 point, you're gonna leave a lot of these guys out in that zone of that you just never touch them. So I think 2 is probably about right. I don't think there's probably much need to like mess around with it for next year to kind of let it bed in. I don't think we have a massive template problem at the moment either, right? Like the double chips has kind of stopped that from happening too much because everyone's played different chips at different points, and therefore like needs to pick different players now as a result of the kind of downstream effects. So that I think that's all working quite well.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I do remember we got Elliot Anderson on the YouTube screen at the moment. I remember at the start of the year he was being proclaimed as sort of the best thing since sliced bread, for example. But I have seen him sort of decline in popularity, I guess, over time. With I think it's only 6 actual points, despite getting 89 DefCon, which is the highest second joint highest among midfielders with Xhaka. Interesting stuff. Let's move on because I think we should talk about the next 4 games. I think there's quite a lot going on with regards to this. So last week we spoke about the different types of swings that you get as we're talking about our pineapples and khakis in terms of the mini swing, the midi swing and the maxi swing. So lots of different stuff going on here. I'm not definitely going to go through every team, but I think it might be worth getting your views on a few different teams here, Sam and Simon, who have got a good next 4 over the block. Sorry if we miss a particular player. We'll definitely get on to that next week. We'll do our game week 8 preview next week. But to start with Arsenal, as everybody knows, a good next 4 with Fulham away, Palace at home, Burnley and Sunderland. I think the key question really on lots of people's minds, especially with this week, mentioned it earlier on in the Bruno discussion, but Saka taking penalty, 200 goal involvements, etc. Over Gyökeres. I mean, which way do you swing at the moment on those, Simon? Is it back to Mr. Saka, given the fact that you're a 3-5-2 kind of guy? Or does Gyökeres still retain some merit with the minutes, assuming Havertz isn't going to come back to fitness for a little while?
Yeah, I mean, in my bones, I'm like a Gyökeres hater, but I own him. So what can I say, really? I'm not on double Arsenal defence. I'm actually on no Arsenal defence at the moment. We'll see if that changes. If you're on Raya, I guess it makes it a bit trickier because you probably have to choose. You can't just go Gabriel, Saka, Gyökeres, for example. The penalty last week, there's been a lot of chat about that Saka gave it up just because he was on a milestone, and therefore like Gyökeres will take the next one. And I don't know. I don't buy this. I think you can probably think you got some good penalty information there. You should take it. That makes Saka a significantly better asset than we thought a week ago, and Gyökeres a bit worse. If I was choosing between the two on Wildcard, for example, I'd probably try and get Saka. Probably, or maybe both, and Gabriel and skip Raya, just get Petrovic. If you've already got Raya, probably Saka's a better asset. But again, I wouldn't be spending transfers to move from a team with Gyökeres to a team with Saka. That is too thin. But if you have the choice of which one to enter, yeah, I'd probably go Saka.
Interesting. I'm sure we'll get there later on, Sam. Are you surprised, Sam, to hear about the about Simon being kind of less infused about double defense as maybe I was kind of thinking he might be?
No, I'm not massively surprised, because I know that whilst Arsenal defence is very, very good, they do have 3 away games in the next 4. There are other factors to picking a good FPL defence than just, are they solid at the back? There's DefCon now. There's also the attacking potential, and transfers are valuable as well. So I don't think it's a given that it needs to be double Arsenal defence. When I mean, I've seen very, very good managers, Simon included, Praz as well, around the community that even up until now just haven't really had Arsenal defence. So they're obviously doing something right. I again, spoiler, do have double Arsenal defence on a wild card, but that's with unlimited free transfers, right? So I can get to that without any real consequences. And I'm not locked on a wild card by any means. I've got the best part of 2 weeks yet to do it. So I am still considering single defense and single attack, giving myself a bit of flexibility to maybe get there by game week 10, when the fixtures are even better. Fulham and Crystal Palace are not that easy. So I'm open to that. I'm also open to single defense and double attack with both Gyökeres and Saka. More likely, now that we've seen Eze playing through the centre a little bit as well, and Ødegaard might be out for an undefined period of time, might make Eze slightly a better pick. So yeah, I'm flexible at the moment, but I am leaning towards double defense, because I do like the underlying data, and Gabriel would be a lock for me on a wild card. After that, I also do like the merit of doubling up to try and capture a bit more of that very high clean sheet potential over the next few game weeks. But there is also attacking returns on the horizon for players like Gabriel, Timber as well. That it's not impossible that they match DefCon players with the attacking returns over the next few.
Yeah, our XUC is, as you know, very good, and they're best in the league. And I think from a game point of view, which again is something that you're insulated against, Si. but from that point of view, I just when I was looking at it in game week 6 when I was wildcarding, I was thinking, well, with the run of fixtures across the sort of midi swing, like we'll get to a point where everyone can be buying in one, unless you're a fire starter like you, Simon. But the real gain is going to come unless from having 2 and doubling up on that sort of defensive sort of aspect of it. And I think the only sort of thing to mention here is the potential proclivity at times, especially when there's a long run of fixtures coming up. And maybe this might help with thinking about Chelsea as well, given their upcoming fixture run all the way basically until game week 17, minus Arsenal game week 13. I think there are at times some elements in the analytics community which do the unthinkable and triple up on defense. It's a well-known play which obviously shocks many with a more orthodox bent. But I mean, at what point, Si, do you look at a defense and think, right, okay, I'm going to triple up on this. I'm going to go wild and ham it up. I mean, if you had your wild card now with Arsenal, given the underlying data and the market odds for clean sheets over the next few, which are we can contextualize and think, Fulham and Crystal Palace, as Sam has rightly said, not the easiest games in the world, but sort of as EV to be gained if you do just think, you know what, Saka, Gyökeres, there's going to be buts about them. There's a creation issue at Arsenal, but defensively we're great. So let's just get triple. I mean, have you ever gone there, and why would you potentially go there?
I have gone there. I had triple Arsenal defense last year, actually, at some point. I don't know. I think these spots, I think they present themselves to you, really. I don't think you need to go chasing them. Like a free transfer in FPL always does more than just like, triple up on defenses. It's going to be like, well, what defenders are you taking out, and what are you not doing in the attack? So if you're going to triple, let's say you're going to triple up on Arsenal anyway, and then the question is like, do you want to triple up in defense, or do you want to triple up in attack? There's going to be like different moves that go along with that either make it a nice spot or not really. Right now, I don't know. I think there's probably too much value in Saka, not to go for the third defender. Probably like some like niggling doubts around minutes for Timber, although I know some people disagree on this. With White back, maybe some niggling doubts around like Calafiori. So yeah, you could go like Raya, Gabriel, Saliba, I guess. I mean, yeah, they're not bad picks, any of them for sure. But you do miss out on 2 other picks by doing so here. I think I wouldn't like chase that structure right now for me.
Yeah, you miss out on good other Arsenal picks in the forward lines, and you miss out on other defenders and defenses that are playing well at the moment with DefCon, with attacking potential. So opportunity cost, I would say, is quite high on tripling up on Arsenal at the moment.
Yeah,
defensively.
it's like you touched on in the DefCon section. There's a lot of good cheap defenders, more than we've ever had, and that really changes which squad structure is going to like be the one that gets you the most points. So yeah, it's just how the lay of the season is really.
Yeah, absolutely. Chelsea wise, again, a very good swing of fixtures, pretty much all the way to 17th earlier on. It's not escaping my notice, and it's not escaping our notice. We did form versus fixtures last week and picked out obviously Enzo's very, very good underlying data. Coming out very strongly in the solvers too. Defensively, more of a mixed bag. As anyone who's been even a pedestrian watching Chelsea, there have been lots of defensive problems. I think last week we had kind of end up with a situation where Reece James was in defense. I think there's only one recognised kind of centre back on the pitch. Liverpool actually had the same situation with VVD and Gravenberg. But yeah, lots of issues at the back, and kind of you've got Cucurella, I think, who's got kind of in the top 10 maybe for EV, but probably a bit of a difficult kind of one to get behind. But a very good sort of long run for Chelsea. João Pedro, if you do own him, probably potentially does stick around, but if you're on Wildcard like Sam, is Enzo just kind of, especially with the penalties and Palmer's absence? I mean, I think many of us have seen the video where he gets kind of jumped on and then immediately goes to check his groin. Not in that way, get your mind out of the gutter. But I mean, they've got a very good fixture run, but it does feel like kind of options are quite thin on the ground, aren't they, with Chelsea right now?
Yeah, I think you pretty much just covered it entirely, really. Enzo is definitely the most interesting, like you say, even more so with Palmer out. Maybe Cucurella, like you say, again. Palmer maybe in 11 from onwards if he's fit, but who knows? I got nothing really else to say on Chelsea. I think
Yeah, I think Caliber would be more interesting if he didn't have so much competition. But with defenders coming back, it gets a little bit less interesting. Sanchez, I don't absolutely hate as a goalkeeper option at under 5 million, but I think you've got better in someone like Nick Pope at this point at around the same sort of price. So yeah, I kind of echo Simon. I still think João Pedro is a decent enough pick at the price, and if you're a little bit more risk averse like myself, the ownership does play on my mind a little bit. But yeah, Enzo, Caicedo would be interesting if the fixtures, ironically, weren't as good as they are. Because you might expect him not to get DefCon every single week in fixtures where they probably will dominate. So to be fair, Nottingham Forest Tottenham will be transitional games. He'll probably get quite a lot of recoveries in those. Sunderland and Wolves, they'll probably sit behind the ball a little bit more. He might be at risk of not getting DefCon in those games, but I'm adding, again, an extra layer of subjectivity to what is quite a cold calculation, and he is hitting the most weeks. So at 5.7, is it 5.8? He's still decent value. It's just he's decent value regardless of fixtures. So he doesn't get better, much better anyway, just because the fixtures are looking nice. Whereas Enzo and João Pedro probably do. So yeah, that's how I'm thinking about it at the moment.
Fair. I know we're all here for the upcoming Leeds discussion, at which point me and Sam are going to go have a wee, just go and make some food and leave, and let Simon speak.
I'm very interested in this.
Okay,
section.
fine. Oh god. We've got to mention Cucurella, who is kind of got decent ownership. Obviously got the assist and got a lot of. I think he got into the bonus kind of last week, 6.1. But with the fixtures that come and the role that he does play in the team from time to time, in terms of kind of. Do we even call it inversing anymore, Sam, in Football Manager parlance? He's not really an inverted kind of fullback, and whatever he does in terms of getting into that sort of number 8 role from left back. Has he crossed your mind? I guess. So I suppose we'll look at it in a bit in terms of your wild card, but has he crossed your mind, Sam, in terms of an inclusion? Because with those fixtures and with the defenders coming back, as has been noticed in the chat as well, surely he should be one of those players that at 6.1 could be productive, frankly, in terms of what he does and positions he's in, which could as well elicit DefCon.
Maybe. Possibly. It's not honestly someone that I've had in any of my drafts or any of my tinkering so far, but yeah, he's not a bad pick. Yeah, I probably should give him some more thought, to be honest. It sounds like a lazy answer that I just haven't really thought about it. But at that price, Gabriel's an auto include for me at the moment. And then after that second defender, do I want to be spending 6.1 on someone whose defensive data isn't as good as Arsenal's, when I could just get a different Arsenal player and Newcastle are there at $1 million cheaper? Yeah. Not a bad pick. If I'm feeling a little bit frisky and differential, then I might go there.
When you ever feeling frisky and differential, Sam? At the start of the season, right? Okay, let's get into it then. So Leeds next 4 are Midi Swing, Burnley, West Ham at home, Brentford, and Nottingham Forest. In the chat, we have seen Andrew saying lots of craze looking at DCL, but the cheap attack route is not for me. And Emmanuel saying I'd rather get Goo than DCL. Simon, the floor is yours. Leeds, the best value team in the league, right? Next 4, probably the time to do it. I've got Rodon be playing him next game. God knows what Sam has done. It sounds like it's a work of Frankenstein, frankly, by the sounds of it so far. But what's your view on the next 4 for Leeds? Simon's a Leeds fan, for those who don't
know. Yeah, thanks for the spoiler. I think it may have become clear soon.
Would have been a weird section if you weren't.
Well, kind of. I think we're still FPL relevant even without my fandom right now.
You are.
We're very kindly priced this year. The fixtures, like you say, are good. I'll give some propaganda. Why not? So Calvert-Lewin, the minutes should be extremely solid for the whole time that he's fit. And then if he's injured for a while, you can drop down to Nemecha, who's 5.0, who would also then take pens from DCL, and he would be nailed in that situation. So you have an escape road in the case that he does get injured. Some information that I haven't seen it that widely spoken about, but I'm also not really on Twitter these days, so maybe it is. Stack has lost most of the set pieces to Longstaff. And Longstaff is also kind of making the same attacking run he was at Newcastle a couple of years ago. I think it's 23-24. The Athletic did a piece on the Longstaff run. It's the same one as the McTominay run, which is like the late breaking one into the box. He's on corners and indirect free kicks as well. So Longstaff just one to watch. And then, Rodon is a great pick, 4.0. You can't go wrong with a min-price defender. So, you can play him now and like make use of the money now, and then just wait until the fixtures get bad to then upgrade another defender elsewhere to cover off and then bench him. So yeah, I think we have some good picks. If you want to get on Leeds. We've looked quite good so far this season. Probably better than I expected. Better than the markets expected. And yeah, who knows how long that will continue. But information so far is good.
Yeah, I mean, we looked at Daniel Farke and looked at his sort of prior inability to, I suppose, crack the Premier League. Looked at Leeds and thought, okay. But as we noted last week, Sam, there has been perhaps this sort of resistance to the whipping boys being revealed thus far, and I think that kind of does extend to Leeds. And I think that, you know, given the price and someone like you with a bench boost to use, I think they're a very kind of handy team to kind of feed into the meta, aren't they?
Yeah, I just wish I could have wildcarded last week into a bench boost of Leeds away at Burnley, really, but alas, did not do that. So I'm a big Leeds stan account at this point. We're all Leeds, aren't we? Very, very excited by some of the cheap options on a wildcard. You've mentioned 2 options that I do currently in. I'm doubled up on Leeds on my wildcard. We'll get to that in a moment. One stat that really sprung out to me in my sort of anecdotal research over the last couple of days is Leeds have actually, in 2 games this season, have conceded quite a high amount of XG. In the other 5, it's been below 1, and quite considerably below 1 XG in 5 out of the 7 games. There was that one outlier against Arsenal where you did capitulate somewhat, but realistically, would you play a Leeds defender away against Arsenal? No, you wouldn't. So having Rodon on a wild card feels like a lock as a 5th defender for me. Just a really sensible pick. He gets DefCon. In the weeks where he hasn't got DefCon, he's got very close. I wouldn't be playing him every week, but I trust Leeds defense enough that if I never ever needed to rely on him, especially on a bench boost, very, very happy to do so. And Longstaff, I've been incredibly impressed with so far. I was a fan of his at Newcastle. I thought he did really well. His late breaking runs, as Simon referenced, again, give him some attacking threat on set pieces. The underlying attacking data in the last couple of game weeks hasn't been that bad, and he's not been terrible on DefCon either. And crucially for me, he's not 5 million, he's 4.9. So it makes my wildcard all very affordable because I needed that 0.1. So I'm very happy to have him over Stack or Xhaka or Dewsbury Hall, mainly for the 0.1, but I'm also very happy with him as a player. Yeah, I won't go on to DCL now. I don't have him in my draft, I'm sorry to say. But I would consider, we'll get onto it in a minute, I would consider flipping the Longstaff position to a better mid and then downgrading a striker to DCL as well, if you're able to convince me. I'm just a bit scarred, and that's not a way to be playing FPL, but I am scarred by him. And I don't know if I could live it down if he failed me twice. I'd lose all sort of
only twice
respectability.
Do you have any left though? That's the question for all of us.
It's a good point. It's a good point.
I kid. But no, I know what you mean about DCL, and I know that he has been one of those options that does raise the hackles, perhaps in a way that not many other players do. But Sai, you were saying before we started, we were like, right, we need to get online now because you're kind of already kind of getting into this sort of propaganda / reason discussion that DCL 5.5 is one of those players who does represent actually very good value over the next little while. I feel a bit sick saying that, but he is quite good in terms of the points, the EV and all this sort of thing. It's pretty crazy. If this guy's starting and giving you fixtures, it does kind of feel like it does make sense, and I'm very glad I don't need to make this decision and don't need to look at him, frankly.
Yeah, I think it's underrated how much 5.5 is a really low price. So one of the moves that comes up now and again for me this week is Lacroix out to Rodon and then Marshall, the 4.4 forward, up to Calvert-Lewin. And that's it. That's the whole sacrifice. It's really not much. So yeah, he's very easy to fit in, like you say, and that just, I don't know, it makes him like a very good enabler. to do lots of other stuff with the money in midfield defense.
Yeah, we shouldn't really let past experiences dictate
No.
our decision making too much. But yeah, it's just difficult. I'm not ruling it out entirely, to be honest, because you do raise some very good points. He's been getting great minutes. The data's not bad. He's on penalties, yada yada yada. But his name is Calvert-Lewin, so it does make
That's
me
an
worry.
edge.
It's an edge. You're right. It is an edge because most won't
It's
go
even
there.
better because people won't pick him, and then it's like great.
Yeah, you are absolutely right as well, and I might be one of those people. But
and
yeah,
we've seen that. We have seen that in the past, haven't we? Like players like Ollie Watkins, for example.
Yes,
widely a bit of a source derision, shall we say, who is can't finish, blah blah blah. Well, admittedly, they did quite well in the first season of the Premier League in 2021, and then suddenly became one of those players we don't say these things about anymore. Calvert-Lewin obviously has had a generational cold streak, let's say, in FPL, save when Carlo Ancelotti was his manager, but still. That's part of the beauty of it, I suppose, as you kind of just said, Sam, that you can't ever say no to a certain player. I mean, for God's sake, Patrick Bamford became a god at Leeds. That's all you need to know about the Leeds effect on certain players. And anyway, without over Gordon Lily, let's move on to a couple of more things. Let's leave Wolves. Yes, there's a mini swing, but thankfully I don't think anyone's going there. Newcastle, I think, is quite an interesting one because of the Walter Marley effect, and the defense as well, looking very good. We mentioned last week, Sam, that they've got genuinely quite a good run all the way until again the end of January, where they've only got Man City of the. They've got Spurs, I think, game week 14 or so. They've got, I think it's Man City, game week 11, game week 12, but a very, very good run for Newcastle coming up. And defensively, obviously, they've been very solid this year, and second best to Arsenal in terms of XGC. From that perspective, surely if you're wildcarding now, not thinking about what I did this week, but if you're wildcarding now, there's got to be at least provision for one of them, right?
Yeah, I think for me, Newcastle defender is a lock. Whether that's a keeper or in defence is up for debate somewhat. But I think given the consistency of the fixtures, there's one poor game week, that game week 12 against Man City, arguably. But in a run that long, you absolutely take that. That's perfectly fine. And that probably takes you all the way through to second wildcard, really, around that sort of point where you can just bank a keeper starting every single week, have Dubravka on your bench if anything were to happen that's a bit crazy. And I think they'll keep a decent amount of clean sheets. Obviously, the data's been talked about a bit this season, but it's going under the radar quite how good they have actually been. They've taken a massive step up in the data, and them and Arsenal are both quite far outright better defenses than any other team so far this season. There's a big gap in the data between them and any other teams. So I do want some defensive coverage there for sure. And then it's a question of whether or not it's worth finding a space for an attacking option for me, or doubling up on the defense. I wouldn't completely rule that out either.
What do you make of Newcastle, Si? I mean, they're one of those that I think were affected by losing lots of players or integrating lots of players early doors. Obviously losing Gordon to the suspension, and then I suppose as a result of lots of personnel being lost, setting up in away games, especially in a very defensive way, it does feel like that's kind of set things out of whack, where you don't really see what the real how is with them. And they are a bit of a distressed asset in lots of ways right now, where they're all pretty much differential picks across the board. Interesting to you guys in the analytics world?
Not massively right now, I have to say. I don't think I would pick anyone on Newcastle if I was on Wildcard. I don't think the fixture run is that great, actually. You've got 3 away games in the next 4. Like Brighton and Fulham are very solid, like upper mid-table teams. Brentford have traditionally been in that kind of region. Maybe we expect them to be a bit worse this year. I certainly do, but I don't know. I could also be wrong about that. They weren't great in the first few. They've been a bit better in the last few games. And then, like you say, Man City in 12. So that next 5 to me doesn't like scream like a great jump on point. Especially because Brighton and Fulham are probably the harder two, and they're immediate, and then you're closer to the Man City game by 10. So I'd probably wait until at least 13. You're right about the defense. It's been very, very good. It's been improving for a while in my team ratings. The interesting thing I think about that is there's been 2 Newcastle games this season, one against Bournemouth, one against Leeds, where both Bournemouth and Leeds have basically like come to like just match Newcastle blowing up the midfield, and then it's just had a completely stodgy, like virtually no chances for either team in both of those games.
Good point.
I don't know how many of them, like how many other like oppositions will come and try and do the same thing, and or if it'll be, you know, have the same result. Yeah, I'd probably wait and see on Newcastle. The entry point to me doesn't look that good, personally.
Okay.
Yeah, fair
Interesting.
enough.
What about West Ham? So, you know, they've got, again, quite a good set of fixtures of the next 4. Bowen obviously has the expected minutes, which probably does kind of endear him to a lot of people at 7.7, so 0.3 price drop, again, a distressed asset. You've got DefCons this week, although admittedly it was against Arsenal, but some potential upside there. There's always boring Max Kilman to be thought of. But yeah, Brentford at home, Leeds away, Newcastle at home, and Burnley at home. So 3 home fixtures the next 4, Simon. If you were looking at it just in terms of like a midi kind of four game sort of stint until the next international break, after which they face Bournemouth, which are probably one of those which is kind of in transition in terms of the analytics thought process. I mean, you've got Liverpool in 13, which is obviously going to be a no-no. What do you think about them? Just to round off this section, really.
Yeah, I think they're mostly not very kindly priced by Towers as assets. Like Bowen will get you some points, but like 7.7 is not. You're not getting a bargain there. The fixtures are nice, and like we don't really know how it's going to go under Nuno for the defense to see if any of that will emerge. I guess we're extrapolating that because the defense improved at Forest, that it's necessarily going to do the same at West Ham. But then coaches like change their strategies depending on the talent they have at their disposal. So like he won't necessarily do the same thing at Forest that he will at West Ham. He didn't do the same thing at Forest that he did at Wolves, for example, or Tottenham. So yeah, for me, it's a wait and see. Maybe if you've got Paqueta or you've got a spot for him, you can just pick up some like penalties and a bit of like other expected returns and like put together something decent value. But I wouldn't be spending my transfers on West Ham. The problem is you're going to end up with fewer transfers, and then you have West Ham assets in your team in 12 that you want to transfer out, right? Like, so yeah, what's the point? Don't bother.
Got you. But on Wildcard, Sam, I mean, you know, you've got Liverpool in 13, you've got Man City in 17, but overall, a run that you can probably get behind, having a player who's got high X minutes, and in Paqueta's case, a player with penalties, in Bowen's case, the talisman for West Ham. What's your view on them?
I kind of echo Simon. I don't think they're a priority include for me on a wild card. If I happen to have a 4.4 million gap in my defense, I wouldn't say no to it necessarily, but I prefer finding the extra 0.1 for an Anderson or a Richards in midfield. Again, if I've got specifically 5.9 and I want to just get that 5th midfielder locked in, I think Paqueta's fine, but you've got other options around that price and that not much more expensive that I think is just slightly more exciting at this moment in time. So I think Paqueta's slotted in on 1 or 2 of my drafts, but as sort of a 15th pick where I'm like, okay, I've got that spot left. Okay, he's on pens, he gets good minutes, decent fixtures, fine, I'll have him. But I'm not like particularly excited to include him or anything. And yeah, I if Bowen was a little bit cheaper as a midfielder, I'd be more interested, or if he had penalties, but he's none of those things. So I don't think he's a bad pick at that price. I just don't, it doesn't stand off the page for me. If I had an extra, I think it's like 0.5, 0.6, I could include him as a third striker, but I don't think that's where the value's at necessarily. So no, just no at the moment. Unfortunately, Paqueta would probably be the closest.
Cool. All right. Final thing on this. So Martin in the chat, which is actually on my list of potential questions for Simon. What's the minimum fixture run he needs to consider bringing in a player? Is it a midi? Is it a maxi? But midi being like kind of 4 or 5 games, maxi being kind of quite a long-term spurt of games, which is quite good. At what point do you kind of are you influenced by the fixtures, or is it just kind of more about the player themselves?
Yeah, I was going to say it really depends on the player as to where that's going to sit. So let's say a player like Bruno Fernandes, like he's probably worth just holding through like even a relatively bad fixture run, because as soon as probably he's going to be like not as bad value as like a worse asset would be in those harder fixtures, and then as soon as he has better fixtures for him, then you're going to want to spend transfers to get him in. Again, it depends also on like how the points are constructed. So let's say like Haaland is going to have more of a swing between his harder fixtures and easier fixtures than say Caicedo or Stack, who are going to be like very steady week to week, and therefore the fixtures doesn't really matter whether it's like easy on paper or hard, because the DefCons are doing the compensation. And then last thing, yeah, I guess the way I differentiate it is like, how quickly am I going to want to spend transfers to like move them back out, assuming that they're not injured. And if that's like pretty quickly, it's probably not a good use. And if it's quite a long time down the line and they're like a good value pick for a long time, that's more how I think about it. And that could be like just down to fixtures, but not necessarily. It could just be because they're a great asset.
Okay, cool. All right. So Simon, you're here. I think that it might be a good time to get your view on Sam's wildcard, which I think is the last thing that we're going to talk about in R4. And I think that I'm going to look at this next week. I'm going to give some more Grass FC views on Sam's wildcard. But I think while you're here, I think it might be quite good for you and Sam to have a little discussion on the epic train crash of Sam's wildcard, the Frankenstein's monster that he's created to move us on to the next piece.
You haven't seen my wildcard yet?
No, I know. I'm kidding. I kid. I mean, you have been trailing this as like an absolute disaster. I can't. Someone's gonna hate it. Someone's gonna be laughing at me.
Well, it doesn't include Bruno, so he is automatically going to hate it. I know what I'm going to come out from this pod with, and it's going to be fix the midfield to have Bruno over Semenyo and downgrade Voltemada to DCL. I know what it's going to be. But anyway, right. We've got plenty of audio listeners, so I will give the full thing. Pope in goal alongside Dubravka, of course. Just seems like a bit of an auto include, especially because I do have bench boost left as well. It's worth noting. In my defense, I've gone with double Arsenal of Gabriel and Timber. So I am taking a bit of a risk on Timber. We can go through that in a minute. I know expected minutes are dodgy. I've got maybe more confidence than the average person would on that. And then I also think the upside is there. I think he's taking up some insanely good positions. Senesi is not quite an auto include, because I think the higher his price gets, the more that you do doubt it somewhat. But I think that long-term Bournemouth fixtures are good enough that I would include find the spot for him and include him. Anderson and Rodon currently wrapping up my defense. As I mentioned, Rodon I think is just a fantastic value pick, and I think Leeds are being underrated defensively. So I think I can actually play him in a fair few weeks. Into the midfield, no room for Bruno, but I do have Saka alongside Semenyo, Ismail Assar, who I've had since around game week 3, and Enzo Fernandez makes it in as well. I do have my ear to the ground on whether Palmer's going to be fit anytime soon. That would impact my thinking on Enzo somewhat, but I still think he's probably a reasonable pick. And then finally, Longstaff makes it in as that 4.9 million midfielder to kind of unlock the rest. But I think even if it was a 5 million spot, I think I'd probably still be eyeing up Longstaff. I think he's just very good value and good minutes, good DefCon on corners. It ticks a lot of boxes. And the weeks that I'm looking at bench boosting, Leeds have that good fixture. And then up top, Haaland, obvious. João Pedro still makes it in for now. And I've gone Voltemada. That's a shaky position for me. I could downgrade that. That's probably where I'm looking at most closely, because I'm not hot on the minutes, but I'm also not hot on many other strikers beneath that price. I know we've talked about DCL. I've got my reservations. Yeah, that's my 15. Simon, tear it apart.
Sure, yeah, why not?
Be kind.
I think it's mostly fine, right? Like it's not like a bad team at all. Like I think it's pretty good. The defense looks fine. You've got most of the main pieces there, like Anderson, Senesi, Gabriel. Yeah, that all seems good. Timber, yeah, maybe you could squeeze that, or maybe you could go VVD. If that would allow you to pick Gyökeres in the triple up I mentioned earlier, which could be like a nice exit route from like Voltemada and JP into like DCL and Gyökeres, Timber to VVD or something. Yeah, like you say, Bruno is the biggest missing piece. I do think Calvert-Lewin is probably like as good value, and you just put him in. And then yeah, Voltemada and Pope probably like the weakest picks to me. Longstaff is an uncertain one, but like could turn out nice.
Yeah, I think
the team's okay.
Yeah, rarely play him, but
yeah, I mean he could turn out to be a guy where he's like just a useful rotation piece, like just comes in at like basically what we thought Stack would be when he had set pieces.
Exactly. Okay, Tom, are you completely keeping your powder dry on this one for now, or?
I think that for now, knowing how much you've got, knowing your process, I think
I've got a lot of thinking to do.
There's a lot that needs to be done. I think it does lack a bit of Calvert-Lewin, frankly. Oh, I kid. But I think that I think we'll see more kind of next week. I do wonder about Pope versus Raya. I do think that maybe you'd be remiss to go for, and maybe kind of a piece like Burn probably fits better if you think about the upcoming City game and all that sort of thing, and maybe that might be. I don't know. I need to. I think we need to. I need to see a more final form rather than right now on the Tuesday in an international break. And I think that, given the fact we've gone for an hour and 32 by this point, I think that there's more value to be had next week.
I'll say one more thing.
Yeah, sorry, go on.
If you're contemplating bench boost 17 and you're not locked into bench boosting right now, something like a Petrovic or a Verbruggen, who both have very, very good 17 fixtures. I think it's Burnley and Sunderland at home. Then that just could be a nice way to squeeze $500,000 from your keeper and keep an Arsenal spot free, just to give you some more food for thought on structures.
Okay, so what, as in, do you mean as in the 9 million combo of both of them, or just Dubravka alongside either or?
Dubravka alongside.
Okay, got you. Okay, yeah, I'll have a look at that. I am open to 17. Especially, just because of those free transfers. I have considered, if I am going that deep with bench boost, to just kill one of the forward spots and go to GU for a while, and then by the time those 5 free transfers come around, then fix that, because Salah will have gone off to AFCON and I'll have just money to burn. So that is a consideration, that because I'm not loving any of the third forwards, I will, jokes aside, I will consider DCL. I know. Stop the pod now, but I think for now I'm not massively convinced on Voltemada, Thiago, Strand Larsen, anyone at a price that I can afford. So I am tempted to maybe just take the spot all the way down to a non-playing GU or something, who I think incidentally might get some minutes soon if Palmer is out for a while longer, but that's by the by. And then just sort that when I get closer to game week 17 potentially. because I think by that point, Thiago, I think, might have a little stretch of fixtures, if I'm remembering correctly.
Yeah.
That might work out nicely. So, yeah, possibly. And then again, it just means I've got more value in my 11 for the time being, and then can sort it out later.
I think that it really does depend on that bench boost deployment, Sam, more than anything else, in terms of the configuration and how it sort of goes. And it kind of the way that I would look at it is, at this point, you really need to decide on whether you're going to bench boost imminently or you're going to bench boost later on, because that has so many knock-on effects. If you're going to carry a cheaper third forward, probably does sort of rely on that. And just there's so many kind of configuration knock-ons in terms of how you do look at it. If you're kind of going, right, okay, I'm going to take those 5 free transfers and then optimize for a bench boost, that means that now your bench becomes something like mine, where you've got a Rodon, you've got a King, you've got all of the money basically taken from that and put into the 11, or whether you later on decide this or next week, okay, screw it, I'm going to bench boost pretty soon. Then you end up kind of with the configuration that you've got. Yeah, and that's going to be the main sort of decider for me in terms of kind of, right, this is kind of the agreed facts of what I'm going to be doing, and then that's kind of informing the decision that I've made going forward. The only sort of thing right now would be about the Timber and Pope kind of configuration, just because I've still got, as you said earlier on, that kind of slight unease about Timber versus kind of going with Raya and just having a burn or whatever sat there. That'd be the only thing that I'd say right now, assuming you're going to bench boost imminently. That'd be the only thing I'd say, yeah, okay. Well, Samade feels like a bit of a vibes pick, but I mean, that's fine at the moment, given the long-term fixtures, and then we kind of go from there. Yeah, the rest of it, absolutely fine. I mean, I've got no issues with it whatsoever. Maybe a Minte might be something to think about, but, you know, it is what it is. I think the rest of it's absolutely fine.
I think for all the Minter hype that you've put on the pod on the last few weeks, and not pick Minter on Wildcard would be, I think, criminal, personally.
I know. But I am a hypocrite if nothing else. So.
Look, mate, the analytics are all over Minte. The best value.
I might transfer him in this week.
I
probably won't. But yeah,
are they actually hot on Minte? That's really interesting.
Yeah, I said I was going to run a Wildcard solve. The pod was on. So yeah, Minter shows up really nicely in that. Shows up in like 40% of Wildcards or something like that.
That surprises me, because he's at the same sort of price point as like a Paqueta. Well, and you've lost penalties on Minter compared to
but his outputs are good. Minter's just always only ever had a minutes issue. And they look really nice, and I mean, I'd be all over it. Minter's great. I would definitely think about like the menu to Minter, and then like what can you do with the money?
Yeah. Just for what it's worth.
Not so many as Minter. Sorry, no. That is bait. That's bait. That is bait.
It's actually not, but yeah, sure. We like
for
to
what
live
it's worth,
riskily.
Minter is currently in my actual wildcard because I'm farming value. So he is actually in there, and I've had him at 5.9. So he could stay.
Even better.
I also have triple Arsenal defense currently, but again, just farming value.
Right, well, we'll get back to this at some point in next week, Sam. As it is, very, very good. But thank you very much for being here, I suppose, both of you. Sam, let's go to the end.
Yeah, I'll finish it off. Simon, thank you so much for joining the pod. I think 4th or 5th time, but we'll definitely have you back for the double hat trick at some point very soon. And I'm sure we'll be talking about Bruno yet again when we get to it, and hopefully Leeds again next season too. And I do have a feeling you'll stay in the league, so it will be relevant once more. Thank you all so much for listening, as always. And for those of you in the chat watching along live, a considerable amount of you, so thank you. If you could leave a like and subscribe, we'd greatly appreciate it. We have been Who Got the Assist. On Blue Sky, you can find us at Who Got the Assist, all written out one word. FPL Pricey for me, or Analytic F.PL for Simon. On X, you can find us at WGTA_FPL, FPL Pricey for me on there as well. And on YouTube, it's WGTA_FPL, me at FPL Pricey on there. And yeah, like I said, if you enjoyed the pod, if you could give us a follow on the socials, if you could give the pod a 5-star rating, and if you're watching along, like and subscribe, as always, is greatly appreciated. All of those things really do help us out. But thank you so much for joining us, and thanks for coming on, Simon.
Yeah, it's been a pleasure. Thanks for having me. Yeah, can't wait for next time.
Lovely. Well, thanks for coming. Thanks for coming on, Simon. It's been really good, a super enjoyable chat. And thanks, Sam, as always, just for being here. With the vibes. Thank you so much. And thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. I hope we assisted you with those analytic boxes. We'll be back next week for our Game Week 8 preview. Enjoy the weekend off, and we'll see you next Tuesday. Why did I say Thursday? What's wrong with me? It's next Tuesday.
Oh, it's a goal. Who got the assist?